And so I think they're going to get off to a slow start. They might wake up at some point. That's why it's important for them to get off to a good start. But I like the spot after the Eagles, before the Chiefs. It's a perfect spot for the Patriots. I do think they have a chance at an upset.
The Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
He's Greg, I'm Nick. Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles with you this week. Wrapping things up, getting ready for the Dolphins and the Patriots on Sunday. First, I'll tell you, this episode is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Greg, just a couple of headlines today. It's quieted down a little bit. Funny how that happens after a Patriots win. Yes. Things calm down a little. But first, Jalen Reagor this morning was signed to the 53-man roster. Your thoughts on Reagor, and also your thoughts on the fact that the Patriots now have 8 wide receivers on this roster.
You mean, wait, we're not firing everybody this week and, already before the midpoint of the season? I mean, it's just, and I know, and I hear from people. I get emails, I get tweets from people like, I'll be on, like, for example, after, what was their most recent defeat? It wasn't the Saints, the Raiders game. And some people are basically, pronouncing time of death for the Patriots. And I'm just like, I just want to see how the season plays out because, that's how it's judged. And you never know in the game, in this game, what can happen week to week. And that's why I don't try to overreact. I know, fans they're allowed to do that. That's why, they're fans, they're passionate. Like, I get it, but I'm not in the same spot. I don't have the luxury of that. I have a team to cover, and there's, now there were 11 games. Now there's 10 games left in the season, and, we'll see what happens. So Jalen Reagor, of course, former first-round pick that they, picked up off the scrap heap from, I think, the Vikings released him, I think. But anyways, what I've seen of him, his speed is real on film. It's good. It seems like on film he reasonably knows where to go as far as his routes and things like that. He did have a nice, in cut in the last game against the Bills. One of those sort of trust plays where, the Bills are playing off and Mac knows 3-step drop, boom. You need to believe that the wide receiver is going to be in the right spot, and he was. It's certainly interesting, Nick, that they have signed him to the roster.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of roster shenanigans going on. The Patriots, by my count, now have 8 wide receivers on the roster. Parker, Bourne, Smith-Schuster, Douglas, Thornton, Boutte, Reagor, and Ty Montgomery, however you want to put him. It hasn't really come out that, hasn't really come to fruition that he's the third down back that we thought he was going to be, or sort of Swiss Army knife like he was going to be when Matt Patricia was here. He seems mostly on special teams, but, whatever. So obviously that's a lot. That's too many wide receivers. You have to think that there's a roster move coming. I thought it might be Boutte, and maybe he gets a case of the Foxborough flu. He came up last week with an ankle injury, but I checked the injury report. He's not on the injury report this week. Look, he keeps getting passed on the depth chart by a variety of people. I think it would be wise, if they can, to shut him down for the year. We talked all along, and I think we're going to have a question about this later in our mailbag. So we won't get into it too much now, but it was going to be tough for him to play a lot this year. I think the other possible move, Juju Smith-Schuster going on sort of 4-game IR to heal everything that ails him. He had the concussion. He's obviously dealt with the knee thing. Considering where they are right now and coming off their best offensive game and look like the pecking order sort of Kendrick Bourne and then Demario Douglas, and then filling in beyond that. I think they can afford, and it might be better for the team, just to put Juju, let him get healthy. And, if there are depth issues later on or they need him, it'd be nice to have a veteran receiver more at 100% later on in the season. So I think that's, a legit possibility. But, yeah, I mean, certainly there has to be an injury concern. Somebody has to be going on IR for them to make this move.
Well, you know what the saying is, Greg, quantity, not quality. That's what they got at wide receiver right now. I'm interested to see the wide receiver mix of snaps this week. Last week, we had Kendrick Bourne with the most snaps. Thank God. Finally, somebody that can give you some yak, give you some electricity when they catch the football, somebody that Mac trusts. He was number 1 in snaps at that position. Douglas was number 2. Devontae took a slide back. Reagor took a step up. Does Reagor get even more snaps and Devontae gets less? Tyquan Thornton, is he out? I would imagine he's going to be inactive with his big fat 3 snaps last week. And you mentioned it on the pod earlier this week. One of those snaps, he ran the wrong route. And Juju's out there on the practice field for the second straight week. Are they going to play him? As you mentioned, could they actually put him on IR? Could they, stash him away for a few weeks? If he does play on Sunday, is he taking snaps from who? How many snaps does he play? That whole kind of juggling game at wide receiver fascinates me.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. You're totally right to point that out. And it's just, it's interesting. Like, I think, I have a lot of patience with Tyquan. I know there's a lot of fans that don't have that, considering his draft status and speed and upside and things like that. They think they want to label him a bust already. He has had a rough go of it as a youngster. As far as his health, it has not been optimal. He has not been on the field enough. But look, I know internally one of the big sort of complaints about the personnel and their lack of ability to do certain things in the early part of the season was centering around they had no vertical option in this game and in this team, and you need to have that. You need to have that at least threat where at least one safety is like, all right, I got to stay over the top of this guy, and that creates space underneath if you're building levels into your passing attack, which the Patriots like to do, which all good offenses like to do, and they've just lacked that. And so I still have a lot of hope for Tyquan. I think he's bright. His speed is absolutely real on film. It is legit. And, I think between him and Reagor, somebody has to present the vertical element in this passing game. I would continue on with Tyquan, at least until he gets hurt again. But then maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I'm not writing him off by any means. People want to write off these young guys immediately. It's silly.
Yep.
And especially given the injury situation. Now, the injury situation is real, as well as his speed. Can he stay healthy, as you just mentioned? That's a huge question. I just wonder if they trust him at all. Does Mac trust him at all? When he's gotten out there, he really hasn't proven that he knows what he's doing consistently. So we'll see how all that comes together. Last headline for you quickly here. Malik Cunningham was released. Then they get him back on the practice squad. I don't know about you, Greg, but it is borderline amazing to me that the guy that was QB2 a couple of weeks ago in Vegas, you're a Mac Jones injury away from Malik Cunningham being your quarterback the rest of that game. And then within 2 weeks, that same guy is getting released. This QB2 tap dance is insane to me. Is it insane to you?
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous, but it just goes along with all the, and I guess we have no other choice but to, pin this on Bill Belichick. But, this just goes along with he just has zero feel for offense. He offensive personnel. He really does. He has no feel for it. I mean, look back on the little Jordan Humphrey stuff, from last year where the guy's playing a buttload of snaps early on in the season when they can't generate any offense, including against the Ravens, where, they were going to need to score in the 30. And then, a couple weeks later, he's released. And, I'm sure it will be explained away and has been in different circles, around the beat that there were a lot of injury issues and they had to do this and they had to do that. I mean, that's the sort of minutia, the margins that Bill Belichick gets lost in, and they lose sight of the big picture oftentimes on offense. And that Malik Cunningham was one heartbeat away from playing quarterback. I mean, Nick, just think of it this way, and everybody knows I did my rant on this, when it happened. But, just think about this now that say they, say Mac Jones got hurt in that game, the Raiders game, and Malik Cunningham had to go in and they didn't do anything and they had a chance to win that game. And then they go, they beat the Bills the next week. I mean, Bill Belichick willingly left a possible win on the table with what he did at the quarterback position. Now, Malik, if this is the second time Malik Cunningham has been released and available to the league and nobody has picked him up. So please stop telling me about Malik Cunningham and, he should play quarterback and he's a weapon. He should do this and that. Like, nobody in the league believes that. He's a developmental player. That's what he is. I don't understand the need they should have kept him on the practice squad. They should have elevated him again for that game, for whatever package that they were going to do. And then put him back on the practice squad. This dance is just silly, but the bottom line is this. Malik Cunningham is a talented kid, but he's very much a developmental kid. He belongs on the practice squad. Just leave him be. Let's see where he is next year in camp, and then we can go from there. Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. I love those little suckers, those little bonus bets. It's like free money. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, so Greg jumped on X today and asked for your mailbag questions. If you don't follow Greg, which I find hard to believe, but if you don't follow him, it's at Greg A. Bedard. If you don't follow me, much more believable, it's at Nick C. Radio. Let's get to some of these questions. Matt Ryan, first on the docket here today, Greg. Not going to make this too complex. So what happened to the Boutte hype?
Should have never bought into it. As we told you here on the podcast, during everything, he got off to a slow look. He was a late round pick. No question about his, he has a pretty good ceiling as a prospect and has look at what he did his freshman year at LSU. But after that, he's had a lot of injury issues. He's had off-field issues. There are a lot of teams that wouldn't even entertain drafting this guy because of some of his off-field issues. Now, as we've said before, everything that I've heard from the building, like, they've really liked him in the building. He has been a professional and all that stuff. We don't know. Well, that was a while ago. I don't know if that has continued. Him not having much of a role on this team when he could have. Is he still doing the right things behind the scenes? I don't know. But I think, the Boutte hype was typical training camp, rookie, wide receiver. We never have any wide receivers hype. Like, look, I was guilty of it when I was growing up a Dolphins fan. Like, especially at the running back position. Like, I used to go nuts because they never had a running game, and then they'd bring somebody in, whether it was like Sammy Smith, I got a little excited for. Or remember, Cecil Collins. Cecil Collins, man, I was so excited. I went up to training camp practice or mini camp practice, and I was like, he's going to be the answer. He's going to give Dan Marino finally a rushing game. And so, I understand. I understand it. But, you just got to, especially with these younger guys. I mean, look, they popped on Pop as a 6th round pick. Don't get greedy. If Boutte can be a long-term developmental guy, maybe he can get his legs back to where he was as a freshman, being in a professional program and being a professional wide receiver now, then, maybe it pays off a year from now. But, to think that 2 6th-round wide receivers were going to come in and make an impact in your offense, it just doesn't happen that way. So, Pop is the guy. He is legit. They hit on that. Great pick. Awesome job by the scouting staff. But Boutte just, like Malik Cunningham, like just let it play out. Let him be a young player in his career. Let him develop. And, they have plenty of other options. Some I don't love, like Parker and Juju, but this is the bed they made for themselves.
Yeah, I still would have given Boutte a shot over Parker, especially coming off of that Raiders game. But it feels like since they didn't do that, and I know he popped up last week. I think it was a hammy. I know you said ankle. Hammy, ankle, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why he didn't get a chance. But it certainly seems like Reagor has surpassed him they want something out of Thornton, obviously, after investing that second-round pick. I would have given him a shot over Parker, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. All right, next question. Eric Larrabee. Contractually, can the team get out from under the Juju and Parker contracts, Greg?
So I am just looking those up right now at overthecap.com, and you yourself can do that. Overthecap.com, great place. Almost all of their stuff is free on there. So Juju Smith-Schuster has $16 million guaranteed. By the way, his over-the-cap valuation right now is $1.65 million. So let's say they wanted, if they cut him before June 1st or trade him or what, let's see if trade's different. They can trade him, and basically the dead money is sort of the same. It offsets. They would save money if they trade him. If they cut him before June 1st, it would be $9.6 million in dead cap. Basically, they would save like $1 million. That's it. And so it's really, Juju's really a 2-year deal. You can get out anytime you want to. This is also one of my complaints when they were 1-5 and everybody's talking about the future, and I was thinking about doing a column about like, all right, well, what steps would I take as far as the Patriots in the future? And one of the primary things I would do, Nick, is, and I don't know if this is just Belichick refusing to do it or them not having the personnel in house, but if I was general manager of the team, one of the first things I would do is find the smartest cap person in the league, and I would start doing some modern day cap gymnastics that the Patriots absolutely refuse to do. Everybody else is doing it. The best teams in the league are doing it. To me, the Patriots are leaving a lot on the field that they aren't, adding more in future years with all their cap space, with all the TV revenue that's coming in. Look, we don't know if it's sustainable. One of the reasons why the Patriots were so good for so long is because they did have cap discipline. To me, that's when the cap was tighter. I think the rules have changed. The rules of engagement have changed on cap management, and I don't think the Patriots have kept up with the times. It's another way that I think they've fallen behind the rest of the league. So Juju, you can get out anytime on Juju after this season. It wouldn't be a huge issue, especially with the amount of cap space that they have. Devontae Parker, if they cut him, it would be $6.3 million in dead cap. They wouldn't save a lot. If they traded him, it's a tradable contract. They would basically save $3.4 million if they traded him. By the way, his OTC valuation right now is $5 million. What? How does that happen? But anyways, yeah, I don't understand that. But yeah, so look, none of those contracts are albatrosses or anything like that. They can do anything they want. And but Devontae's definitely, I would say, easier to get out of.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, Larry Speedstick, Belichick, Kraft, Mac Jones, kill one, Greg, marry one, and sleep with one. Who you got?
Well, let's see.
It's just tough.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely marrying Kraft. I mean, he's got the deeper pockets. He's the billionaire.
He got the money. I was just thinking the same exact thing at the same exact time.
Yeah, I'm definitely marrying him because, and he's getting older. So, the marriage wouldn't have to last all that long. And then, I'm inheriting places in Palm Beach and New York City and Brookline and all that stuff. All due respect, Robert. I'm not, we're just having a little fun here. Kill one or sleep with one. I guess if I had to quote unquote kill one, I guess it would be Belichick because, he's not getting any younger. I don't think, he's going to be around for very much longer. And you can always find a replacement, for him. Sleep with one, I guess Mac's the last one left. I don't exactly know what that means, but, I'm trying to have fun and play along.
So Greg would marry the 82-year-old billionaire Then he would quickly move on to Mac, and Greg would be the cougar in that relationship, and he would sleep with Mac. And then he would then move on to Belichick, and he would take Belichick out. He would kill Belichick.
Maybe I should marry and kill Robert Kraft. Like one of those Lifetime movies. Like Cyanide or something. No,
can't do it. Can't do it. Won't do it. You only got one option for each person. I actually agree with all of that. Like Belichick's legacy, it's solidified. He's getting older. Like, he's done all that he could do, or he's done most of what he could do with football and with his life. So, and Kraft, you talked about a deep pockets, and Mac's got plenty of life to live. So there you have it. Although you have to make sure that you cut the relationship off after that one shot with Mac, because, you've got Kraft's money, Greg, and you don't want Mac chasing Kraft's money that you got from Kraft,
exactly.
Eventually.
And Mac would be I think Mac would be a little needy and stuff.
He would. You getting ready for dinner, Mac be yelling at you across the kitchen. Sit, Greg, sit, like he was doing Pop last week. Sit.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anyway, Troy Brown. Is he getting a pass? This is from Mike603. Is Troy Brown getting a pass on the inconsistency with the Patriots wide receiver core?
Not if you've listened to this podcast for the last 2 years. I mean, I can't, speak to what other people are, writing and saying. And, and I think I've mentioned this before. I don't read and, listen to a ton of other stuff during the season, because I like to keep my mind uncluttered and sort of form my own opinions. I don't want to be, unoriginal and unknowingly crib from somebody else. And when I do hear things, whether it's from like Chris Sims or Greg Cosell or, I did mention on Felger and Mazz that I did think it was interesting about Rick Spielman was on Tom Curran's podcast, and they talked about his philosophy for building around Kirk Cousins, and when he was GM of the Vikings, and how he sees Mac and Kirk kind of similar in that they're not the most dynamic athletes at the quarterback position, and Kirk Cousins likes to step up into passes into the pocket, so it was a premium for him to build up the 3 interior offensive line positions. He admitted it didn't work what he tried to do, but I thought that was interesting. But look, as far as Troy Brown, if you've listened to this podcast and my issues with the route running on this team, I've been very critical of Troy the last 2 years, and I gave him somewhat of a pass Matt Patricia's year, because you need a coordinator, an offensive coordinator in the NFL should be able to coach the assistant coaches, and I don't think Troy was getting that at all last year, and I think it showed. And Bill O'Brien has a lot of fires to put out, and I think you can make the argument that it's getting better. It was better this week. I still had some issues with the routes, including Kendrick Bourne on the second play of the game running the wrong route, and Matt getting mad about that, and Pop Douglas ran a wrong route, and that stuff's going on. But look, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. Is Troy Brown a good wide receivers coach? Is he good enough, or could they do better? We'll, like everything else, we'll let the season play out and have more of an answer after it.
All right, Michael Quirion has a question for you. Trade deadline coming up soon. Yes, it is. It's on Halloween, so it's 5 days away. We're creeping up on it. Could you see the Patriots actually trading for some additional help, Greg, on the O-line? He mentions Jerry Jeudy. He mentions DeAndre Hopkins. Broncos, Titans seem to have a fire sale going on right now. Would you do you see the Patriots adding instead of maybe subtracting before the deadline is up?
I do not. Nothing major is on the offensive line. I don't see it. They've put in enough. And look, I'm just putting myself in Bill Belichick's shoes and sort of, the way he thinks and the way I've observed him over the years. I think at this point he's like, I put enough resources into the offensive line, and they made those 2 late camp trades right before the season for 2 tackles. Calvin Anderson is back on the list with an illness. I don't know if this is still the thing that kept him out a while, but man, what a rough go for this guy. And he's, even before that, he was a healthy scratch behind a bunch of guys. Tyrone Wheatley Jr. is on IR. Vidarian Lowe is not good right now. I do think he still has potential with the right, if he has a good offensive line coach to develop him. The skills are there. The technique is not. It's not even close. But I think they've settled on, and they should get Riley Reif hopefully back at some point. I don't know how serious his injury is. And I do think they liked him at guard. But, you do worry a little bit about the tackle depth. Trent Brown got beat up last week. Micah Winu's dealing still, with the ankle. He's not 100%. I think they feel okay about City So at right guard. He's the weak link, but you can deal with one weak link on the offensive line. They have Mafi behind him, who's, okay and developing. There's also Jake Andrews is out there. You have James Ferentz on the practice squad. I do worry a little bit about offensive tackle depth with what they're doing, with Trent Brown and Micah Winu. You're one injury away from being back into it, but are they really going to put more into it and get somebody decent? I doubt it. And as far as the other stuff, I mean, maybe. I've never been a Jerry Jeudy guy. I certainly didn't like his attitude with the Steve Smith stuff. That's a bad sign to me where, Smith was being critical of him and then Jeudy got all sensitive about it. Like, be a pro. Don't be a big baby. Would love to have D-Hop here. I don't know if they're getting him in a trade. He's been really good this year. As far as getting open and stuff like that offense stinks. And so I don't know. I don't really see it. I'm more interested in them being sellers. I don't think it helped Josh Uche's cause here that he missed last week and the pass rush was great and did a great job against Josh Allen. Do you really need Josh Uche? If you can get a third or a fourth for him, I would do it. They'll probably hang on to Duggar, which unless they're going to franchise tag him or give him a boatload of money, which I wouldn't do. He was bad last week. I would entertain trading him. So, I don't know. I mean, Nick, do you think there's a trade that they could make that's going to make them a lot better? I do think they're competitive and I want to play out the season and I think they'll be in it somewhat, but I don't know if there's really one trade that sort of puts them over the top.
No, not really. I mean, there are just so many questions, at so many different spots. There's a lot of holes in the boat that you're trying to plug as is. And I don't know if there's that one player, that one marquee name that you could bring in. I agree that the Hopkins thing could be interesting. I'm not the biggest guy on Jeudy. I don't think you're going to give up what you would need to give up probably to bring in Cortland Sutton. He's another interesting name in Denver. But there's not really a ton out there. Like Derrick Henry is the name everybody's talking about. You're not bringing in Derrick Henry. So, yeah, as far as the offensive line, I hope Trent Brown's out there on Sunday. He's been their best offensive lineman this year. That video from when he got hurt in the Buffalo game, I think it was Mike Reese who posted that earlier this week. That video looked bad. Like he went down awkwardly. Somebody hit his leg awkwardly. He did like a split. Didn't look great. Hopefully he's okay. But if you end up with, if this offensive line is healthy, relatively speaking, and you end up with Brown, Strange, Andrews, Reif, and Owenu, I think you could do much worse up front than that. So we'll see if they can stay healthy. All right, last question from the mailbag. I know you have another one or two that you wanted to get to, but the last one I've got on the list, this is from WaterBoys. If Belichick is back, will Kraft bring in someone to handle personnel? WaterBoys throws a name out there, Jeff Ireland with the Saints.
That's one of the big questions out there, WaterBoys. As far as after the season, a lot of this stuff, and I get a lot of questions about like, who do you want to see as the next coach? What do you think the Patriots do? I can't get there yet. Like, let's, if they're eliminated with like a month or, whenever they're eliminated, we'll start to talk about that stuff. But, there's a season to be played and there's, they can win this game on Sunday and then they have a lot of winnable games, after that and later on in the season, and they'll have a bye week to get healthy and things like that. Like, I'm all about the season and, but as far like, I do think the Krafts need to take a hard look at their personnel. I mean, we've been over it. Their offensive personnel is just not good enough and their approach to offense isn't good enough. And, how they are brought into the modern age, Do they give somebody in personnel? Does Mac Rowe work hand in hand with Bill O'Brien? Do they bring somebody else in? I have a hard time seeing them bring somebody else in from outside the family on top of Belichick to pick personnel. I mean, I just don't think Belichick would stand for that. And, maybe that's one way to move on from him. But I don't see something like that happening. I mean, could they empower somebody more? Yeah, but this is all written into Belichick's contract. It would get really thorny.
Yeah, and Ian Rappaport this week with Greg Hill, I think it was Greg Hill. He mentioned that his reporting is that Bill does have final say. He has not heard that anything was taken out of Bill's contract about that. So, because the Dale Arnold post from earlier, everybody was reporting stuff on Belichick's contract. Dale Arnold had posted that there was some responsibilities laid out, and people started to wonder if that meant that Bill no longer had final say or that he gave up some of the power as GM that he once had. Rappaport said that's not what he has heard and what he has, reported. So seems like Bill still has final say. I think as far as the bigger picture and the question of whether or not you keep Bill at these positions, it's like I have fallen into this trap as well, saying, if they get to 7 wins or 8 wins, then Bill will stay as head coach, but the GM title has to go. I also think it depends on who you're beating, right? Like if they finish with 7 or 8 wins, but those wins, like if you look back and Buffalo was by far the best win of the season and they lost to all the good teams they played, then really how much better did they get? They just beat up and they just beat up fellow mediocre to bad teams. If they stack up wins against the Giants and the Commanders and the Colts in Germany, and Zach Wilson still playing at the end of the year with the Jets and they beat the Jets, here at Gillette. I mean, even 7-8 wins, I think you have to kind of evaluate all of it. Who did they beat? How did they look? There's a lot of football left. And, I said last week, my hope percentage about this season before the Bills game was at 2%. I officially more than doubled my hope percentage. It's now up to 5%. Yeah, big movement in the hope percentage this week. And we'll see how they do in Miami, if that'll affect that number again. So that's where I'm at. All right. You have a question or two, Greg, that you wanted to address from the people.
Yeah, so Champ DePug said PFF graded J.C. Jackson high. How do you feel about his play? If you've listened to this pod, you know how I feel about PFF. I take it with a grain of salt. And, there's a lot of context that needs to be put into stats. Like, for example, I think I read somewhere that they had Sidy Sow as the highest rated rookie guard this season with his performance against the Bills. I mean, come on. Give me a break. The guy gave up like 3 quarterback pressures, 3.5 run stuffs. He was by far the worst on the offensive line. Like, get out of here with that nonsense. It wouldn't surprise me if J.C. Jackson graded high in this game. I do think first of all, he gave up the touchdown to Stephon Diggs. When he didn't tackle him. Like, how can you be rated high when you don't even tackle? It's, you don't even touch the guy down. So there's that. But look, there's got to be context, into things. And when the Patriots are getting pressure as much as they did, on Josh Allen, like there's not a lot of time. For you to cover. And they did a great job of that. They were able to get pressure before the Bills' routes developed. And Ken Dorsey never adjusted. He kept running the same sort of deep level routes where, that just wasn't a winning strategy against the way the Patriots were playing coverage. But in general about J.C. Jackson, I think he's really good in man coverage. He's still really good in man coverage. He's had some huge coverage mistakes. He's been playing man when everyone else is cover 3 and vice versa. I didn't see that this week. But he's really good in man. The more man that the Patriots are able to play, and with Jack Jones being back, they're able to play a little bit more man. That allows J.C. Jackson to be at his best. If he has to play a lot of zone and have different responsibilities, he can get into trouble. So far, they haven't had to do that. We'll see how it goes, this week against the Dolphins. Oh, and one more question, and this is actually for me. just because I think some people, if they were listening to Felger and Mazz yesterday, might not have understood the context. But basically, the question is it true you flipped off Felger and Mazz producer James Stewart after the show on Tuesday? It is true, but there's context. So Jimmy came in hot. We were all sort of hot. I had a feeling going into Tuesday's telecast that it was going to be one of those tractor pull middle of the week things where we're all sort of on each other's nerves. And I didn't like, and I knew it from the day before where they were mocking my column about Mac Jones, which I thought I was accurate. I was giving the kid his flowers for a great
virtuoso, blah,
yeah,
virtuoso, blah.
Exactly. And I had to turn it off. I heard them doing it. I heard the tone. I had to turn it off because I knew it was going to make me mad. And so I came in and I'd be like, all right, you guys want to, virtuoso to my face and stuff like that. And, Jimmy Stewart, anytime you criticize the show, he gets his back up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Anytime you criticize their content or their approach to something, he doesn't like it. Hey, I understand it. It's the same stuff with my work and, my columns and things like that. And,
but just for the record, they could criticize everybody in the job they do. But if you criticize the job they do,
little sensitive. Yeah. They're like, the sensitive Patriots and sensitive Bruins fans, how about Bedard now? Patriots is better, that sort of thing. But so when I leave the show, I always make it a point to go by Jimmy's window and sort of giving him a salute like, hey, thanks for the show. And he does it back to me. And so yesterday I did it to him, Tuesday I did it to him, but I also tossed in a bird. I was smiling, we were laughing, and he gave me the double bird back, and he was laughing and smiling. We were just busting each other's chops, because sometimes we get on each other's nerves, and that's fine. That's what happens with these shows. But, it was not in a mean spirit. We were just joking around. It was sort of locker room banter, so I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, and from what I know of Jimmy, he's a good dude. All right, this episode... awesome. Brought to you by Fanduel, exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. New customers receive $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. All right, Greg, before we get to picking this game, Tyreek Hill could be out. Reportedly a hip issue, did not practice yesterday. And if you heard what Tua Tagovailoa had to say at the podium, what Jalen Waddle had to say, it did not necessarily come across as he's going to play this weekend. Could this be a legit injury? Is there maybe some shenanigans? What do you think's going on with Tyreek?
Yeah, I don't know, Nick. I mean, does anybody else find it funny that he all of a sudden, has an injury issue and might miss a game the week before he's supposed to play his former team? I mean, I don't know. And maybe the Dolphins aren't all that worried about the Patriots. Maybe they're just like, all right, well, we'll give him sort of a bye week. We need him against the Chiefs. He's going to want to play against the Chiefs. That sort of thing. But, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But that was my first thought.
Changes the landscape of the game if he's not out there. I mean,
yeah.
You could argue that earlier in the season, and really – not even early, the entire season so far, you could argue that he should be in the conversation of MVP. He's been that good. He has been that dynamic. So if he's not out there, that would help the Patriots' cause. Of course, if he's not out there and the Patriots end up winning, then how, then we have to deal with all the questions next week of, well, would they have beaten them with Tyreek Hill and all that stuff? So I don't know if I'd rather have Hill out there on Sunday playing against the Patriots so we don't have to deal with that crap the next week, or if I want him, out so the Patriots have an even better chance of winning this game. Speaking of their chance of winning this game, Greg, FanDuel line, still Miami, 9.5-point favorites, over under a 45.5. How you feeling?
So I was surprised. I thought, especially given the Tyreek Hill news, I thought the number would be more around like 7 or 7.5. And we saw the line drop against the Bills last week as we got up to game time. I haven't watched a ton of Dolphins film. I watched like 3/4 of the Eagles game. And, but I did listen to people like, that I trust, like Chris Sims and Greg Cosell, who watch these guys, week after week. And especially Greg Cosell talked about like he didn't think that the Dolphins did very much motion with Tyreek Hill. Like, he couldn't think of one instance. I did not see that on film. And while they certainly had their issues against the Eagles, I didn't think the Dolphins were all that bad in that game. I mean, if Tyreek Hill catches that ball late in the third quarter, it's a tie game. It's 17-17. The Dolphins, their biggest issue was they had a ton of penalties in the game. Every time they did something, including, I think, their opening drive, they scored a touchdown and get called back by penalty. They had 10 penalties. The Eagles had 0 in the game. While the final score, was rough and the end of the game was rough, where I think they were just getting manhandled. I think the Eagles finally wore on them because they're so big on both lines. I didn't think that the Dolphins played all that poorly in that game. So I think their demise is somewhat exaggerated, and their performance against the Eagles, that loss, I think, has been somewhat exaggerated. I do think that the Patriots, the first time around, had a decent plan against the Dolphins. I was definitely critical of it. Too much 3 deep safety. They gave up a lot of stuff underneath, and that ended up killing them in the game. And I was more critical of, look, the team's built on defense and special teams. And the offense is going to be slow out the gate with a new coordinator and injury issues in the offensive line. And I'm sorry, the defense has to make plays, and you have to be more aggressive. If that means you might give up a big play, them's the breaks. But this is the way you built the team, and so I thought they were way too conservative. Now, you contrast that, and I just posted a column last night on BSJ about the defensive approach against the Bills. I thought it was awesome. It was a tremendous job by Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo. Finally, and I've been very critical of them against the Bills. They took the fight to the Bills, and it ended up winning them the game. I mean, they blitzed like 50% of the time. Half of those blitzes were heavy blitzes, 6+ guys. I mean, it was unbelievable, and that determined the game. Now, I do think there's a lot of things that the Eagles do that the Patriots can replicate, including how they're big up front. They're somewhat fast on the edges. You got to contain. You got to condense. I would look for the Patriots to put a premium on the edge with speed guys. You got to try to keep those motions as much as possible inside. You got to make it an offensive line game because their offensive line is not very good at all. And you got to play from in front. If you play from behind against that Dolphins team, it's over. And so it's important for the Patriots to get off to a really good start, just like they did against the Bills. But I do think they have a puncher's chance in this game. I'm definitely picking them to cover the point spread. I think it will be more anywhere from 3 to 7 points. But I do like this spot for the Patriots. I do think, yes, the Dolphins might be a little bit grumpy coming off the Eagles game, but I think more importantly, that's a very big physical team that takes a lot out of you when you're a finesse team like the Dolphins are. And so I think they're going to get off to a slow start. They might wake up at some point. That's why it's important for them to get off to a good start. But I like the spot after the Eagles, before the Chiefs. It's a perfect spot for the Patriots. I do think they have a chance at an upset, but I'll probably end up picking the Dolphins by about 3 or 4 points in this game.
I like the point about the Eagles coming off the Eagles game. They are a physical, tough team to play. So Miami's got a ton of injuries. The offensive line is all banged up. Isaiah Wynn on the IR. Armstead is out. Connor Williams has been banged up, although he's been on the practice field. That's their starting center, if you're wondering. Eichenberg has been replacing him lately, but it does look like he has a chance to play. Williams has a chance to play, but that whole line is banged up, and they're not very good to begin with. Defensive backs. Jalen Ramsey's out there practicing. Today, Fangio said that he's not sure if he's going to play on Sunday. They're just trying to get him more involved. We'll see if Ramsey's out there. He was supposed to get out there by December, so this would be a very early return. But Ramsey's been out there this week. Holland, who's a tremendous safety, he's in concussion protocol. He might be out. Xavier Howard did not play last week due to a groin injury, so their defensive backs are all sorts of banged up. Tyreek Hill, we mentioned him. Raheem Mostert wasn't out there on the practice field yesterday. He's a little dinged up. He's on the IR with an injury. So this team is just ravaged right now with injuries. Red zone's going to be a big deal. They're a really good red zone offense. And if we remember back to the game earlier this year, the defense for the Patriots, the plan didn't have an issue with it. Them laying back and not giving up big plays. They did a great job on Tyreek Hill, even though Jonathan Jones was not playing in that game. The issue was in the first half, they gave up touchdowns and not field goals. Their red zone defense broke. They have to be better defensively inside the 20 when the Dolphins get into that red area. And I'm interested, Greg. I'm just fascinated to see the approach from the Patriots. Will they build off of what we saw against the Bills? Will we see that consistent motion from O'Brien? Will Bourne and Douglas get most of the snaps at wide receiver? Will we see some of those things, more play action from Mac and getting him into a rhythm? Will we see more of that continue, or is that going to be a one-week thing? Will Juju come back and clunk it up, so to speak? So I'm interested to see the approach offensively and defensively. As you mentioned, their approach worked. I think Bill would tell you that their approach worked for the most part earlier this year against this team. Do they go back to that, or do they mix it up like they mixed it up against Buffalo? Very interesting game to watch.
Yeah,
coming
I will
off
say
of
the
last
biggest,
week.
the one thing I wanted to mention, the biggest key for the defense, and the Patriots did a reasonable job of this in the game, but the most important thing against Tua is to take away his primary read. When you do that, then he starts to panic. And starts throwing off his back foot and pitter-pattering and stuff like that. So that's the most important thing in this game. I think they'll obviously change from what they did the first time. Belichick never likes to play somebody the same way twice, but that's the premium when you play against Tua. Take away his first read.
Yeah, I think the 9.5's a little heavy. So I'm leaning with the Patriots to cover this. And I'd go the over. I'd go the over 45.5. I think both teams could score some points on Sunday. All right, BSJ, check them out. $50 for the year. Bedard, Giardi, obviously doing great work with the Patriots. Corrales rolling with the Celtics with that win last night against the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. Hags has joined the crew as well to cover the Bruins. So Joe Haggerty is there as well. So check them out. One last thing to squeeze in here, Greg. You love the name Deflator. We're going back to the BSJ member question, which we haven't done in a long time. But Deflator asks Tyquan Thornton, lack of snaps. Are they easing him back in? Does his tape look bad? Or is it more of a case of him missing time and being behind the 8 ball, so he needs time to get reacclimated before they trust him?
Yeah, I think it's just it's the lack of practice time. When you're a young player, especially a receiver in a complicated offense, you need to be on the practice field. You need to play games. You need that tape. You need the teaching points from it. You need to earn the quarterback's trust. And Tyquan's just missed way too much time. And I think, the best you can hope for him this year is to slowly, stack success. It would be nice at some point here if he hit a shot play. I assume, I would assume they're going to dial one up for him if he's active and all that stuff in one of these games coming up here. And, you just sort of, build from there. But I think against the Bills, the way the Bills play with the zone and the two safeties that they have who are really smart, I think it was more of a short intermediate game, which it was because Mac Jones had the second lowest average depth of target at like 4.3 yards last week. There will be other games against, especially once they play more man-to-man teams. And the Dolphins don't really do that. But against man-to-man teams, they're going to need more speed on the field and somebody who can just take somebody and go and beat somebody. And they don't have enough of those guys. So he's not much of a zone guy. Look for him more against man teams, but you just want to slowly build him up. He's missed too much time. He needs to practice. He needs to play.
He's Greg. I'm Nick. Back next week. Recap this game. Peace. The CLNS Media Network is powered by Fanduel. Sign up at FanDuel.com/Boston and get in on the action with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose.